Cedric was a young soldier who had always been courageous and driven. He had grown up in a family of military veterans and had always been taught to face his fears head on. Despite his upbringing, Cedric harbored a secret fear that he could never shake. He was afraid of the enemy's bullets and the thought of losing his life in battle. Cedric knew that his fear was holding him back and preventing him from becoming the best soldier he could be. He resolved to become fearless no matter the cost. He trained harder than ever before, pushing himself to his limits, but no matter what he did, he still felt that fear deep down inside. Cedric decided to seek the wisdom of an old sage who lived deep in the mountains. He climbed up the steep and rocky paths until he reached the sage's cave. The sage welcomed him and asked him what he wanted. "I want to become fearless," Cedric said. The sage nodded and asked Cedric to sit down. He then told Cedric a story of a young warrior who wanted to become fearless. The warrior went to a master and asked him the same question. The master took the warrior to a river and asked him to stand in the middle of it. He then handed him a sword and told him to fight the water. The warrior swung his sword at the water, but of course, the water was too powerful, and the warrior couldn't defeat it. The master then said to the warrior, "If you want to be fearless, you must learn to flow like water, not fight it." Cedric understood the sage's message and left the cave feeling enlightened. He realized that fighting his fear was futile. He needed to learn to accept it and use it as a source of strength. Cedric returned to his unit, and the next day they were sent on a dangerous mission. Cedric felt his fear rising again, but this time he didn't fight it. He acknowledged it and used it to keep himself alert and aware of his surroundings. His unit successfully completed the mission, and Cedric felt a newfound sense of courage and confidence. He had learned that fear was not a weakness, but a natural emotion that could be harnessed and used to his advantage. From that day on, Cedric became known as a fearless soldier who never hesitated in the face of danger. But he never forgot the lesson he learned from the sage and continued to flow like water in every situation. Cedric's superiors noticed a change in him and recognized his newfound courage and leadership skills. They promoted him to a higher rank, and he was put in charge of a special unit that was tasked with completing highly classified and dangerous missions. Despite the increased responsibility and danger, Cedric remained calm and composed in every situation. He had learned to trust his instincts and use his fear as a guide, making quick decisions and taking calculated risks that often led to success. Cedric's unit became renowned for their bravery and expertise, and they were often called upon to complete the most difficult and critical missions. One day, Cedric received a message from his superiors that a terrorist group had taken hostages in a remote village, and they needed his unit to rescue them. Cedric and his team immediately set out for the village, not knowing what they would face when they arrived. As they approached the village, they could hear gunfire and explosions in the distance. They knew they were in a tough fight. When they arrived at the village, they found that the terrorists had taken over the entire town and were holding the hostages in a building in the center of the town. Cedric knew that they had to act fast, but he also knew that they had to be smart about their approach. Cedric and his team quickly devised a plan and split up into smaller groups to infiltrate the town from different angles. They used their training and experience to move stealthily and avoid detection as they made their way towards the building where the hostages were being held. As they approached the building, the terrorists spotted them and opened fire. Cedric and his team returned fire and quickly gained the upper hand. They fought their way into the building, taking out the terrorists one by one. Finally, they reached the room where the hostages were being held. Cedric kicked the door open and they rushed in to free the hostages. The hostages were scared and disoriented, but Cedric and his team quickly reassured them and led them out of the building to safety. As they made their way back to their base, Cedric couldn't help but feel proud of his team and their bravery. Cedric had learned that fear was not something to be ashamed of, but rather a natural emotion that could be harnessed and used to his advantage. He had become a true leader, and his team respected and trusted him completely. Cedric continued to serve in the military, and his name became synonymous with bravery and courage. He never forgot the lesson he had learned from the sage and continued to flow like water in every situation he faced, always ready to face his fears and overcome any obstacle that stood in his way.